Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax-Enos, a small-town girl turned TV nutritionist and healthy living expert. I design health programs for the average guy or gal, including those average guys named Metallica. On September 1st, 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked every oncologist the same question, why did I get cancer? But none of my doctors had good answers for me. I wanted answers, and that's why I started this podcast. I want to help you to lower your cancer risk and provide self-care tips for those in the battle. I'm getting answers, and I want to share them with you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Why Did I Get Cancer? And this is something new that I'm trying. I'm calling it October Reflections and Questions. So my plan is, at the end of every month, I'm going to be talking about reflections on the month with all the podcast guests, things that I've learned, things I wish I would have known 20 years ago, but also your questions. I get a lot of questions every week from y'all, and I don't often get a chance to answer them. So this is kind of a clearinghouse. So let's dive in. And I think we'll start with October reflections. And I had some really great podcast guests at the end of September and into October. And one was Dr. Stephen Hesse, and he is the author of the book, Understanding the Heart. And yet he had a heart attack at age 34 in the middle of when he was writing this book. So the irony was not lost on him. And we had a really interesting talk about what things maybe went into him getting a heart attack. One was he had incredibly bad news. He said, like, the worst news of my life. And then the next day, or maybe 2 days later, he did his typical super hard workout. And then he ended up in the hospital with a heart attack. So I think a couple things that my reflections on that podcast was to be gentle with yourself. You know, when you're in the middle of something and you're really under massive amounts of stress, it's okay to push the pause button, and maybe you do a different type of workout, or maybe you do no workout at all. Maybe you go and you take a nap, but really listen to your body, and it's okay to just kind of make changes along the way. Again, being gentle with yourself, pausing, taking a deep breath. We also talked a fair amount about kind of just living in the modern age, which is under, bright lights, not natural lighting. And until I had this conversation with Dr. Hesse, I just didn't realize how bad unnatural light was for me. And here's what he was saying, and I'll just unpack this a little bit. Circadian rhythm is really important. And circadian rhythm is, you wake up at 7 a.m., you see the morning light, you see the sunrise, and about 12 to 14 hours later, with the sun set-ish, depending on the season, your body starts to make melatonin and serotonin, and you get tired and you go to bed. Circadian rhythm is really important. And he was telling me that being in unnatural lighting for a good part of your day, say you're working in an office building, or you get home from work, and every light in your house is on and they're all fluorescents or LEDs or, just, again, it's not natural lighting. So he was saying how important the circadian rhythm is, and for us to try to re-engage that. When your circadian rhythm is working really well, you can wake up naturally, you can go to bed without taking, medication, without feeling like you need a glass of wine to try to relax. And then you end up sleeping better. You wake up more rested. And he was also saying a really key component of this is that when you're sleeping well, that's when your body is running surveillance throughout your system. So if you have cells that have kind of gone rogue, they're damaged, that's when your body is starting to get rid of all that stuff when you're sleeping. So he really emphasized the importance of sleep. Again, getting up first thing in the morning, walking on some grass if you've got it. If you're lucky enough to have a yard, And if you're not and you live in a big city, at least trying to get outside fairly quickly in the morning, looking toward the sunrise. Even if you don't make it to the sunrise, you just still look at that direction when you do get up. That's going to help to reset your circadian rhythm. So 12 hours later, again, you start to get tired and you can fall asleep naturally. So loved his information. And probably my biggest takeaway is whatever your grandparents or great grandparents did, do that. So eat fewer processed foods, try to get outside as much as you possibly can, and try to move your body. You don't need to go to the gym. Most of the things he was talking about were absolutely free. So get outside, do a walk, do some stretching. If you sit at a desk all day, try to stand up and walk around every hour, and just do a little bit of stretching. Can make a world of difference. Another October reflection was with Dr. Natalie Greenberg. She's at the Center for New Medicine, where one of my very first podcast guests, she started that center. Her name is Dr. Lee Aaron Keneally. And Dr. Greenberg and I were talking about pushing the pause button. Clearly, there was a theme here in October of pushing the pause button, staying calm and peaceful, trying to be as relaxed as possible. And we often over respond to situations. And I will raise my hand and I will tell you I am guilty of being kind of an epic over responder. I'll hear just a little bit of information. I admit it. I take it and I run with it and I build this whole thing up in my head. And then I might get really irritated with somebody or a situation or somebody who's cut me off in traffic. Yes, I know I'm human, but I am working on the over responding. So here's the advice that she was giving me. She said, there is a space between hearing some news and my reaction. There's a space in there where I can put my hand on my stomach. I can take a couple of deep breaths. I can feel my stomach moving back and forth, pooching out on the inhale, flattening on the exhale. I can gather my thoughts. I can get into just a calmer place before I have a reaction. And bonus, instead of having a reaction, maybe I could just have a response, which doesn't have to be one of irritation and one of upset, or one really of just me maybe not having all of the facts. So it was a great conversation. She's a big believer in taking your time throughout the day. Again, pushing that pause button, taking deep breaths, staying hydrated, connecting with nature. And again, here's this theme of not eating overly processed foods, because that can really end up setting you back. It's a lot for your body to digest. And so again, similar advice to Dr. Stephen Hussey. What did your grandparents do? Do that. Again, keeping things simple, and health doesn't have to be expensive. And Dr. Natalie Greenberg can really relate to that, because she was very ill when she was in college. She had a toxic mold exposure, which most mold exposures are toxic, combined with Lyme disease. And it really pushed her into this path of stopping the form of study she was doing, which was journalism, and moving into the medical field. So again, she is just a wealth of information, and I really enjoyed her podcast. Okay, so October is reflections and questions. Let's go through some of the questions that I have received in October. Deb, how do you stay calm? Oh, you're so cute that you think I'm calm. I'm a work in progress. I have never been a consistently calm person. When I was a kid, I was, back then they called it hyperactivity disorder, and I was on Ritalin. Not a very calm beginning to my life. And I've had to work really hard at staying calm. So here's what I do. I move my body a lot. I find that if I can stay connected to my body, that it keeps my brain in a calmer place, where again, I have a tendency to respond instead of react to situations. So here's the breathing technique I'm doing the most often these days. And I actually got it from reading James Nestor's book. It's actually called Breathe. Phenomenal book. And then I actually watched his videos on BBC Maestro, which is kind of like the UK version of Masterclass. So he calls it, and actually, I don't even know what he calls this breath, but it's basically 3 inhales and then a big exhale. And so he says, breathe into your stomach and then your chest and then up into your neck and then let it all out. And I will do this breathing. They're not huge breaths. So it's, I don't know if you can hear me do that, but it's not like I'm taking 3 massive breaths, but I am putting my hand on my stomach for an inhale, then in the center of my chest, then up toward my neck, and then just a gentle exhale through my nose. What I find with that breath is it really seems to calm me down. I do that when I get into bed, and especially if I've had, maybe I'm up late working, or over the weekend we had an impromptu party. Sorry you weren't invited. It was impromptu and kind of a surprise, but I didn't get into bed until midnight, which I am telling you, I just never do because it sets me back so much. But I got into bed and my head was just spinning, and I was thinking about all the fun conversations we had, and I'd probably eaten too much. So I started doing this 3 inhale and then the exhale through my nose. And I have to tell you, I was asleep in probably 5 minutes or less, which for me is a real miracle. So if I forget to do this 3 inhale and 1 exhale breath, again, that I got from reading some James Nestor's information, I will just put my hand on my stomach and I just make sure that my stomach is moving. So I might do this first thing in the morning, put my hand on my stomach before I get out of bed. If I'm in a meeting, nobody knows, I've got my hand on my stomach, maybe that, nobody's looking, but it just reminds me that try to get your stomach to pooch out on the inhale and flatten on the exhale. It connects me to my body and it really helps me to stay calm and to stay peaceful. And then if all else fails, I'll just get up and I'll walk around my house. I might walk down and get my mail. Even just sitting at my desk, and I'll usually have some sort of a dish towel or something near my desk, and I might just do a little bit of stretching and just try to, again, just connect with my body. So that is how I stay calm. I'm a work in progress, as I mentioned, but for the most part, these things work for me. This is a great question as we're getting into the fall and then winter months. How does my activity level change from summer to fall? And how does my food consumption and or drink consumption, coffee versus tea, how does that change with the seasons? So let's start with exercise first. I am a mover. I'm a mover and a shaker, I like to say. And I know the power of a little bit of movement throughout the day. I'm not a big gym person. I don't have any ongoing relationships with gyms, but I do try to get into like a formal exercise class a couple of times a week because I also like the community. So I use something called ClassPass. I'll tag that in the show notes. And you basically pay a monthly fee and you can kind of go to classes all over the place, which I really like because I do like variety. I walk more in the fall because I love the fall colors. I used to be a big runner. I no longer run. My body just cannot handle it. And I really do start to make that transition from summer, which is more activities outside, lots of surfing, lots of swimming. Then I start to transition into more walking. I do not have an Apple Watch. I don't really have any way to track my activity. And sometimes I'm jealous when I see people with the watches on, but quite honestly, I can also get a little bit compulsive if I'm trying to stay too focused on counting steps and doing different things like that. So when I'm outside and I'm walking, I just enjoy the walk. I try not to bring a phone. And if I do bring a phone, I'm usually on airplane mode and maybe listening to a book on Audible or just, praying or just talking to myself. Sometimes I do that too. And if you live with me, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, we are rolling into the cold season, which means we are rolling into Thanksgiving. And as long as we're talking about Thanksgiving, I'm going to confess to you that I don't really like the traditional Thanksgiving. And mainly because I've just never really enjoyed turkey. However, I will say that I tried ButcherBox turkey a couple of years ago, and it was moist and it had a lot of flavor, just really depth of flavor. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm 50 something years old and I've realized I really like turkey. So I was so happy when ButcherBox reached out to me and they said, we've got a great deal for your community. Perfect for Thanksgiving. It's only October 21st through November 19th. But in your first box for a new user, you can get an entire turkey, a turkey breast, or a whole spiral ham for free and $20 off of your first box. So go to butcherbox.com/Enos, then use the code Enos, and you get to pick your own protein for your first box, $20 off of your first box. And it's just perfect timing for Thanksgiving. So hope you enjoy it. So lots of walking in the fall. I am not great at lifting weights, but I love being strong. So here's the commitment I've made to myself, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it because maybe y'all can keep me accountable. I am lifting weights for 10 minutes a day. That is not a whole lot of time, but 6 days later, that's an hour of weightlifting. And you know what? I can fit in 10 minutes a day. Even if I'm super busy, I can do it. So I have weights that I leave out so that I see them and it's a good reminder. Probably would be really smart for me to just do it at the same time every day, but I haven't made the leap to doing that. But here's my advice for you moving forward into the fall. Get your cardio in. I don't do cardio like a big heavy cardio like I used to when I run, but I do try to walk for 10 to 20 minutes a day. And sometimes it's 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there, and that is totally fine. But at my age, which I'm 59 years old, I know that the money move for me is more muscle on my body. The more muscle I have, the less likely I am to get injured. So again, 10 minutes a day of weight training. One day I do 10 minutes of upper, next day I do 10 minutes of abs and torso, and then 10 minutes of legs. And then every day, I just switch it out to something new. There's probably tons of YouTube videos that you could watch to do just like a 10-minute weight training workout. And that's how I transition. And stay strong into the fall and winter months when I traditionally might want to just stay in bed and sleep and not get up and move. Okay, let's tackle the second part of that question, which was how does my food and beverage consumption change from summer to fall to winter? Well, I will tell you, I am more tired in the fall and winter, and I'm very light sensitive. So I struggle. So I will say that every day around 3 or 4 o'clock, if I lived in another culture, I'd be taking a siesta, taking a nap. But because I live here, what I have a tendency to do is crave a ton of sugar. That is kind of just your natural circadian rhythm. You get tired in the fall and winter when it's starting to get darker, especially after that time change, which is looming. Um, and I crave more sugar and more carbohydrates. So here's how I transition food wise. First of all, let's just start with that kind of witching hour, which for me is the 3 to 4:30, maybe 5 o'clock, is I will have a cup of hot tea. Sometimes I'll put some monk fruit in it. And monk fruit is a sweetener that I do actually really like. It does not spike blood sugar. And I will just have a cup of maybe ginger tea or mint tea with a little bit of sweetener in it. And that helps to kill my sweet tooth. And it kind of just helps me power through my afternoon of work or maybe not even working. And then into the dinner hour, and then I'm usually fine. So that's kind of my hardest time of the day when it comes to fall and winter. Whereas in the summer, I don't know, it's sunny and it's bright out and I'm happy and I don't get as tired in the summer. And I don't know if you're like that, but again, I'm very light sensitive and I know this about me. So try to be really careful between that 3 and 5 o'clock. Here's how I start my day in the fall and winter months. I'll get up. I have a cup of coffee. I always put collagen in it and a little bit of coconut oil. and a little bit of, I love the Laird's product. I'll tag all this in the show notes. But I'll have a cup of coffee. I'll go outside. I'll walk around my yard. I'm watching the sunrise, looking in the direction. I don't stare right at the sun, but looking in the direction of the sunrise. And then about an hour later, I'll be hungry. I will say I used to do a lot of intermittent fasting. I don't do that as much now. Part of it is probably my age with hormonal stuff. But what I prefer to do now is be an intuitive eater, which means if I wake up and I'm hungry, I find I eat something. If I wake up and I'm not hungry, then I'll have my coffee and I'll maybe eat an hour later. But if my body is telling me it is hungry, I will give it a really good, healthy meal at least 99% of the time. Sometimes, maybe not. But typical breakfast for me in the fall and winter is going to be very savory. I'm not a cold food eater when it's cold outside. So whereas in the summer I might do Greek yogurt with lots of berries and seeds and things like that, quite honestly, it's just too cold for me in the fall and winter to eat those things. So I'm going to have more savory things like maybe chicken sausage and eggs. This morning I had leftover chicken rice soup that I'd made the night before. I am absolutely fine with a non-traditional breakfast, but my key components first thing in the morning is I need to have at least 15 to 20 grams of protein. I stay well hydrated. When I get up, in fact, first thing in the morning, I will have a glass of water before I have anything. And then I make sure I have some sort of produce and fiber with that breakfast. So let's say I'm going to have sourdough toast with maybe some smashed avocado. There's my produce. Then maybe I put an egg on top or sliced chicken sausage. That's a phenomenal breakfast. And that's going to keep me full for a few hours. Or I also do leftovers. And again, that's going to follow that same formula with a big hit of protein, a little bit of fat, and a little bit of fiber, which is going to be coming from the produce. I usually drink warm beverages throughout my day when it starts to get colder out. I'm a big fan of matcha. I'm kind of new to the matcha game. I'm going to be doing a podcast on matcha, but I'll tag the different matcha brands that I'm really liking right now. And then as I kind of move into the lunch hour, I don't do a lot of salads in the fall and winter. If it's a warm day, I might do a salad, but I'm more likely going to be doing leftover grilled vegetables from the night before with some sort of a protein on top, maybe a little sliced avocado. If I don't have avocado, to get that fat, I might do a drizzle of organic extra virgin olive oil. But again, it's a pretty hearty meal. My biggest meal of the day usually is lunchtime. If my big meal of the day is at night, I find it harder to sleep. And at one point in my life, I had GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. And when you have a big meal at night, it's hard on your system. It takes a lot of energy to digest that food. And then when you lay down, if you have something like GERD, or you have a tendency toward that, it just makes it easier to have a flare up. So I have my biggest meal of the day between, I'd say 1 and 2 o'clock. And then dinner might be small, might be a bowl of soup, might be a small rice bowl where it's, rice with a bunch of veggies and again, protein, a little bit of fat. Obviously, you see the theme here, which every meal for me is going to have a good hit of protein, a good hit of fat, and fiber coming from some really good organic produce. If I have a sweet tooth at night, that's a little bit tougher. I don't do the cup of hot tea at night because I don't want to have to get up and go to the bathroom because there goes my sleep. And I don't want to do that. So at night, I look for a kind of a sweet fruit. Right now, I'm having maybe a handful of grapes and a small little handful of granola mixed together. That's kind of a nice little after dinner sweet treat. I also really like dates. I think dates, really good fiber hit, very nutrient dense, have been on the planet for a really long time. So I'll just pull the seeds out, have 2 or 3 dates, maybe put a couple of little like low sugar, dark chocolate pieces in there. And that's a really lovely way to end my meal. So that's probably my biggest departure from changing my food from summer to fall. And I really don't eat after the sun goes down. It's much better for my digestion. And also, it's really good for your circadian rhythm to not be eating into the evening hours. And just to recap on that circadian rhythm, probably one of the most important things we can do is nurture our circadian rhythm so that we can be in a healthier place. So that's why I'm up not at the crack of dawn, but pretty early, again, looking toward the sun, trying to really reset that circadian rhythm. I'm walking on my grass, doing some grounding, and then I've really wrapped up my eating right as the sun is going down so that it makes it a lot easier for me to have really good restful sleep, because that's when my body's really working when I'm sleeping. So it's in my best interest as a cancer survivor to make sure that my body at night can really run the surveillance that it needs to run and get rid of cells that are damaged or have gone rogue. That is that is my wish for myself, and that is certainly my wish for you. Okay, final question. How do I protect my sleep? That is a really good question, because I am very protective of sleep because I know the power sleep has to keep me healthy and functioning on all cylinders, all times. So, a few things that I do. First of all, I really turn my lights down in the evening. So as the sun starts to go down, I really modify the lights in my house, because if the lights are bright, it sends a signal to my body of, hey, Deb is not going to sleep soon. She's actually needs to gear up, and you need to make more adrenaline and cortisol. That's the last thing I want to be, that's the last kind of message I want to be sending my body at night. So I start to modify the lights. If I walk into a room and the lights are on, I'll kind of just close my eyes until I get over to the dimmer switch and turn the lights down. Makes a big difference. I also wear blue light blockers at night, which is going to kind of automatically just really tamp the light down so that my body is preparing for sleep and a better circadian rhythm by, again, making more melatonin and more serotonin and getting me into a nice calm space. I do wear a sleep mask to really knock down any more light. We don't have great blinds in our bedroom. And so it still lets in a little bit of light at night. So I wear a sleep mask. I have an air doctor, air purification in my bedroom. You know, if you're going to be in your room, your bedroom, for a third of your life, you want to make sure you're breathing really good air. So I have an air doctor in my room, which also kind of serves to be a little bit of white noise, which I think also just kind of helps me to be a better sleeper. And then we keep our house really cool. I can't remember the exact number in some of the research that I've read, but somewhere around 70 or even cooler is the best way for your body to get into a really good deep sleep, which is going to make it more restorative. So I keep my house really cool. And then here's a key thing that people forget about is don't drink too much water at night. This is why when I mentioned earlier, I don't drink tea at night, even if I have a sweet tooth, because I don't want to get up and then have to go to the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. There goes your sleep. And then it takes you a little bit of time to get back to sleep. So I'll drink a little bit of water or whatever it is, tea with my dinner. But then I really stop drinking fluids probably 2 hours before bed. And if I thirsty, I might just take a little bit of a sip. So I really cut back on the fluids at night, which means I also have to be really good about my fluids during the day, so I stay nice and hydrated. So thanks for joining me for this October reflections and questions. This was really fun. So feel free to send me more of your questions. I hope you had a great October. Looking forward to a beautiful November. And let's try not to get too caught up in all the holiday craziness. So do your deep breathing, take time for you, pray, meditate, get out in nature as much as you possibly can. God bless you. Okay, I want to talk to you about something that used to be considered a little bit woo-woo, and you know what? It's not considered woo-woo anymore, and that is the use of essential oils. Back in the day, with my female clients who were just, really maxed out with stress, I would take a little bit of lavender, put it in a cotton ball, and then they could just kind of tuck it into their bra, and then the warmth of their skin would cause this lavender scent to come out, and lavender can be very calming and help you to just kind of reconnect and be more peaceful. Plus, I also think that smelling scents like lavender or jasmine, things like that, blue tansy, it helps you just to remember to take a deep breath and kind of just chill out. One of the other things I love about essential oils, it's actually our sense of smell. It's 10,000 times stronger than any other scents that we have. So fast forward to today where I use essential oils on a pretty regular basis. And one of my favorite types of essential oil, it's kind of a combination. It's called Peace and Calm. I get it from a company called Young Living. Their quality of essential oils is really unmatched. I have been very, very happy. I will also say they're super concentrated, and they're probably going to be a little bit more expensive than what you would find at your local supermarket, but the quality far outweighs the price. And I just feel like they last really long. You don't have to use very much to really get a strong scent. So in the show notes, I've got some links to my favorite essential oils and why I use them. The company, again, it's called Young Living. Everything's in the show notes. I use these when I fly because flying can really stress me out sometimes, especially over the holiday season. So this also makes a great, I can't believe, am I going to say it? It's going to make a great Christmas gift for friends and family and for yourself. It's definitely part of my self-care kit, whether I'm traveling or I'm just home alone on a Friday night and my husband is, out, and I am just going to put on a mask, smell my essential oils, put them in my diffuser, and I'm just a really happy and relaxed girl. I really like it when I'm like that. So go to the show notes, get all my info about essential oils. Enjoy. Hey, y'all, can you do me a favor today and go and leave a review of this podcast? I know that the more great reviews, wink, wink, emphasis on great, reviews that I get, along with more downloads and more subscribers, that pushes this podcast out to people who might normally not even find it. And the reason I started this podcast and my real heart for starting this podcast is that I needed this information. It wasn't available. And so I started a podcast so that I could be a blessing to others. So you're a blessing to me just by being here. And again, thank you for your support. Thank you for your positive reviews and all of the notes that you send me. And also just wanted to say, hey, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. And if you need medical advice, please reach out to your team. That is going to be just the best source for you because they know you. So again, I hope you enjoy this podcast.